Hello, I'm Sarah, this is Hardcover Hearts, and this is my week of reading wrap-up, where I talk about the books that I read this week, what I'm currently reading, and potentially could read next week based on my mood. So this was a lovely holiday weekend, a nice relaxing weekend here in the United States. It is pouring rain. We've had a glorious, wonderful, delicious, much needed rainstorms. It's storming outside right now, so the light is a little strange. Apologies for that. All right, so I have a ton of books to talk about today because I was off for part of the week and I just dove in. So let's get started quickly. So the first book that I finished is a Booker shortlist book. This is A Passage North by Anuk Arudpragasam. Gorgeous, gorgeous cover right there. And this is a book that's a meandering, thoughtful, intelligent, but very, very, very slow book. Very slow book. And I think, in my estimation, this book suffered because of what I was reading around it. So let me explain. I've been doing the Cloak and Dagger Christmas, where I'm reading mysteries, and it's fantastic. It's gotten me out of my reading slump, and it delights me to no end. However, the premise of this book made it seem like it was like, I don't know, mystery, literary fiction-y kind of book. The setup is that Krishan is at his home. He's in Sri Lanka, and they've been worried about his grandmother's caretaker for a little while. His grandmother's caretaker had left, and she went to her home, which was hours away from where they were living. She went back to her village, and ostensibly it was because she needed a little vacation, and she got sick while she was there and was unable to come back. And this was very unlike this woman who the whole family had become very close with. He gets a call that says that from the woman's granddaughter, and apparently she died. She had an accident and is dead. He's suspicious because of the manner with which the woman talks about it and she kind of doesn't have a lot of emotions. She seems to be maybe holding something back, but something about it feels strange to him, and so he makes a determination that he's going to go and he's going to find out what happened. And so with that kind of setup, and with all the books I've been reading, I kind of was expecting something a little more gripping, a little faster paced, a little more about the mystery, so to speak, about what happened to this woman. Instead, what we have here is this, as this man is taking this trip and taking this train trip to the village, he's going through war-torn Sri Lanka, and he's thinking about war. He's also thinking about an ex-lover that he had, this woman who's kind of a free spirit, who seemed to be maybe a little ambivalent to him, but that he was completely in love with. And so he's grappling with all of these things during this trip. It makes for a very pretty read, very thoughtful, like I said, but it just wasn't what I was looking for at the time, and I think my expectations kind of skewed my enjoyment of this. I wonder if I had read this outside of Cloak and Dagger Christmas, if I would have had a different impression of it. Good book, but just not living up to what I was expecting. But I see why it was on the list. Okay, so next up. Again, Cloak and Dagger Christmas. So I got this out of my library. This is The Heron's Cry by Anne Cleves. So this is the second in this Matthew Venn series. It's being called I think it's called the Two Rivers series, but it also says Detective Matthew Venn novel here. So so it's interesting how they're kind of trying to name it. I really like this one. I like this one maybe a little bit more than the first one, which I really liked. So we have Matthew Venn, and he's the lead detective in this little village, a little town, and this is a place that he grew up in. He left many, many years ago because his family was involved in a religious sect, a very strict religious sect, and Matthew was gay, is gay, and he was pushed aside, he was ostracized because of that. He came back with his husband, and they have put down roots. His husband does social work at a local community recreation center that has a cafe and other things for developmentally needing adults. And so the first one really went into Matthew and his relationship and his feelings coming back to this place. And who he is as a person, along with solving the crime. But this one, we kind of pivot to a different member of this squad, this detective squad. So it's almost like a police procedural. And I really liked that shift to kind of broaden the aperture a little bit on who these people are. And the murder is something that happens in this artistic community, and very interesting repercussions for Matthew and his husband, because his husband is friends with one of the women who is a suspect. I think it's what you would expect from an Anne Cleves book. She does the Vera series as well as the Shetland series. And so it's very much about these very atmospheric, kind of insular communities, beautiful writing, really good, deep character studies. So you kind of can't go wrong if those are the types of things that you like. So I am looking forward to reading the next in this series. Then Leo and I picked up our Ms. Anita Brookner project. This is Altered States. I do love this cover. Unfortunately, this is almost all that I loved about this one. This is like number 15 of the Anita Brookner project we're doing, where we're reading all of Anita Brookner's work in order of publication. There was a moment where I thought this could be very interesting. Unfortunately, it didn't go in the direction that I was hoping. The thing that could have been interesting is this could have been a Hotel de Lac twist. Hotel de Lac was her famous book. It was, I think, the 4th book of hers, and it won the Booker Award. And there's some similarities. I thought, oh, wait a minute, are we getting Hotel de Lac if the main character were a man? What I mean by that is, in this book we have Alan, and Alan is a successful lawyer. He's boring. He has no real social life. Is kind of dull. He's going to do the right thing and fulfill his duties as a barrister, and just kind of a dullard. Well, he falls head over heels in love with this woman, Sarah, who is a free spirit. She doesn't share his feelings at all. She's kind of indifferent to him at the very least, annoyed by him, which is usually the case. And he just cannot believe that there's somebody out there who is immune to him and doesn't pay attention to him, and so he just goes for her full throttle. And she's indifferent. She'll play with him if he's around, but other than that, she's pretty clear that, she's going to do her own thing, and does not take his phone calls, doesn't follow any social niceties in any way, shape, or form. He's very upset about this, and that creates an inn where one of her friends, Angela, kind of weasels her way into his life, ends up taking care of him when he's sick, and then moving in. Next thing you know, they're engaged. And he's kind of passively just goes along with it. And some things end up happening from there. But the reason that I felt like this could be a Hotel de Lac spin-off accompanying piece is because he is told and given advice that he should go and spend time at this older hotel in Switzerland. And while he is there, it's very similar to Hotel de Lac in vibe, right? It's kind of like older, a little run down, all older people there, and it's only there for tranquility and calm and keeping everyone relaxed. And so I thought, oh, that could be really interesting. But it didn't go in that direction. That was just, she was just rehashing a place, but not necessarily revisiting it from a new lens, which was such a bummer because that would have been so good. You know, don't pick this one up. It's fine. Anita Brookner can write. She's beautiful sentences, beautiful images, beautiful, but she's also really old-fashioned. Her ideas about what men and women want are so strange. She's an odd bird. This is not the one to read. So let's get on to the next one. I had a digital arc of this, and this is the latest from Colson Whitehead, Harlem Shuffle. And I'd heard good things about this, but my God, it was so good. It was so good. It's like a heist noir set in Harlem in the late 50s, early 60s. And we have a main character, Ray Carney. And Ray Carney is running a few little light scams. Like he owns a furniture shop and he sells furniture. Some of it, he doesn't really know the provenance of where some of this comes from, but he kind of turns a blind eye to it and just kind of lets it find its way onto his showroom. He has a young cousin, and the young cousin wants to involve him in something, and Ray wants no part of it. Ray's father was a kind of notorious guy for running afoul of the law, and he just wants to stay away from that type of thing. Well, his cousin gets him looped into it, and that kind of opens up an avenue where he meets people that he otherwise wouldn't have met. And Ray is nothing if not enterprising. While he may get out of that scrape, it does mean that he looks, learns, meets new people through this experience, and finds a way to leverage that to his benefit. And we see him as this really interesting character. Family is very important to him. His wife is important, their children. Establishing himself as a legitimate businessman and kind of pushing aside all of these other characters from his father's past as well as his cousins. What Colson Whitehead did here was so interesting, especially as he was wrapping it up. You get to see all of these things start to come together, and you understand the nuance and the subtlety with which he's been building this story. I would love to see more of this character. I can't imagine that Colson Whitehead is going to do like a series, but if he did, oh, this would be fantastic, because I absolutely would read more from this character, without a doubt. So I see why this is on a lot of the best of lists, for sure. Then another Cloak and Dagger. I told you, y'all, I've been on a roll with these. This is my third of the Lidu series. This is City of Ink by Elsa Hart. Put it that way. So for the last 3 years that I've done Cloak and Dagger Christmas, I've read one of these series each time, and it's been delightful. This one is set in the 18th century in Beijing. Now, Li Du is a traveling scholar. He was kicked out of the Forbidden City in a scandal involving his master that he apprenticed under and that he worked for. And in the previous two, he's been wandering. He's been in exile, and he's been just kind of wandering. And it gave us a really wonderful opportunity to learn about China's expansion, what was going on in China at this pivotal time. This is the time when the Dutch East India Company is trying to make inroads. Where there's a lot of strife, a lot of change is happening in the area. So really fascinating time to set murder mysteries in. Now, in this one, it changes a little bit, and it kind of threw me off at first. Very slow start because we don't even see Li Du for a little while. It sets up first what's happening in Beijing, and it's a time where there are students that are trying to take this supposedly almost impossible test. And if they get through this test, they are guaranteed jobs. It's hugely prestigious. It's a big, big deal. So you have all of these families that are freaking out about this test. And everyone is on edge. We have, in essence, a tile factory where people make these tiles in their kilns. The wife of the owner of this tile-making company and an official are found murdered. And it looks like they were involved in something scandalous, that they were maybe having an affair. So, that kind of sets us up, but we haven't seen Li Du at all through this entire thing. And then all of a sudden he does show up, and he's been living in Beijing. He has arrived and he has taken on a role as a secretary. So he's no longer traveling in exile. He's working well below his skills. But it's something that allows him to have time to investigate. But we don't find this out for a good bit into the story, so it was a really slow entree. Now, after finishing it, I can see why that was so good, because this book really does help to pull together some of the pieces that we learned about in Book 1 and Book 2. Very good, satisfying mystery. Again, the atmosphere, the information and insights that you get about China in the 1700s were wonderful. And I really look forward to, and I hope that she puts out another book this next year. Otherwise, what am I going to read next year for Cloak and Dagger Christmas? Ugh. And then lastly, what I did finish was another mystery, and this was really well timed. I got this off of Scribd. And this is the Monastery Murders. This is the second in the Stanton and Barling series by E.M. Powell. The reason this was so well timed is because it opens on Christmas Eve, and I started it on Christmas Eve. This is set in a way earlier time period, 1176, in a monastery. There is a death in this monastery, and Barling has been specifically asked for because of the work they did in Book 1. He was told to go by himself, but he finagles it to make sure that Stanton, who is kind of like his apprentice, comes with him. Stanton was a king's messenger, and Stanton is just a great character. He's younger and he's kind of anti-authoritarian. He is really smart, but he's not learned. He's wary of hierarchy. He's wary of too much power, and always suspicious. Barling is a know-it-all. He's very worldly and very, very smart, and likes to make sure that everybody knows it. And so the combination of the two of them together is quite amusing, very fun. There's a lot of details, very atmospheric, so again, really great for the winter. You've got this really hard scrap monastery where part of their devotion is a lot of work and meager food, and what ends up coming out of this is a division between the people who work for the monastery that don't live in the monastery, so they're lay people, and the monks that actually live there. And the way the class distinctions work, it all comes out. It's all part and parcel of this mystery, which I loved. And then, I wasn't expecting it, but some really wonderful insights about the characters came out at the end, which just guarantee that I'm going to want to read it further. I'm not going to say any more, but just know that I really enjoyed the revelations that came out about the characters, and yeah, I'm definitely going to pick more of these up, which is always fun to want to immediately move into the next one. So that's what I read. So again, Cloak and Dagger Christmas is serving me well. I'll put a link to all of the women who are hosting it below, so that you have access to look at their channels and get any other ideas if maybe my mystery taste isn't as much your mystery taste. So then let's talk about what I'm currently reading. I am determined to finish Proust before the end of this year, so this is getting a little more attention. I also am reading The Waves of Virginia Woolf. This is a part of my year-long project I've been doing with Elizabeth of Bookish North. And I think in the last video I mentioned we're probably going to finish up by Valentine's Day. So started this. I'm looking at this like a prose play as opposed to a true novel, and that's really helping me kind of get myself centered in it, because you definitely see, Elizabeth and I were saying, you definitely see how this idea that she's been playing with about a stream of consciousness and moving from one character's experience into another, it's fully formed here, whereas it's been teased in other books, but here it's the main feature and she's nailed it. So we are a third of the way done, and we'll be continuing with this. Then I am reading The Magician. This is a NetGalley arc that I received. And I mentioned earlier also that I had listened to Buddenbrooks by Thomas Mann to get myself ready, because this is Colin Tobin's fictionalized biography of Thomas Mann. And I didn't, other than reading Death in Venice, I didn't have any other experience with his work. So I read Buddenbrooks and then also have my Death in Venice reference, and did a little poking around to get some more other insights into his story, and it really helped me because I'm following this one so much more than I did The Master, which was about Henry James. So pleased with that. Then I kept seeing this on bookish Twitter on the kind of best of the year. And then I ordered it from one of my more recent Blackwells orders. And this is The Feast by Margaret Kennedy. Look at that fantastic cover. Now, what's so funny about this is I'd finished a book and I was just kind of looking around like, oh, what do I want to read now? What do I want to read? And I saw out of the corner of my eye, saw it, grabbed it, immediately drew myself a really luxurious bath, got in the bath, started reading it, was hooked immediately. And then I took a photo and I looked more closely, and I had received and opened my Christmas present from Leo from Little Book Life. And it was by this woman, Catherine Ritzenbrink. And here she is writing the foreword. I thought, well, that's interesting. And so I went to send this to Leo, and I opened up the flap to kind of put this information in as well. And there's a blurb by Anita Brookner. I mean, like that, if that doesn't say that I have to read this book, I don't know what does. So I'm about a third of the way through. It is fantastic so far. The setup is that there is a hotel on this, and it's not even a hotel, it's more like a big old home that the owners have come into hard times. So they're letting it out and calling it a hotel. And so that in and of itself is already an interesting premise, but it was on a gorgeous cliffside. Well, the cliff has fallen. The local reverend has to do some kind of funeral service, and he doesn't know how to because they don't even know who's alive and who's dead. And then everything starts to look backwards of all of the people that were there and why they were there and their interactions. And it is so good so far. Really fun. So that's what I'm reading. And then next week I have the entire week off. So I've kind of compiled a list of books, and I talked about it in my blog. So I put a blog post, I'll put a link to that below if you are interested in reading about that. But other than that, that's it for me for now. I hope you enjoy your reading, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Bye.